In the sweltering heat of a small-town courtroom in rural Pennsylvania, where the air hung heavy with the scent of polished wood and faded justice, Judge Harlan Whitaker slammed his gavel down with a theatrical flourish. "Order! Order in the court," he bellowed, his voice echoing off the walls like a thunderclap. Before him stood Elias Thorne, a lanky, sharp-suited lawyer from the big city, looking utterly bewildered. Elias had come to this forgotten corner of Amish country to settle his late uncle's eccentric estate, a man known for his vast fortune built on tech innovations, but also for his bizarre sense of humor. The will's final clause had turned the probate hearing into a spectacle. To inherit the millions, Elias must pick any wife for free from a lineup of local women nominated by the community, all of whom were single and in need of a fresh start. The judge, a rotund man with a mustache that twitched like a living creature, leaned forward, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Son, you've got beauties, brands, and bombshells here. Take your pick." But when Elias's gaze landed on Miriam, the quiet, heavy-set Amish girl in her plain dress and bonnet, standing apart from the others with her hands folded modestly, he pointed without hesitation. "I'll take her, the obese Amish girl." The courtroom erupted in laughter, led by the judge himself, who slapped his knee and wheezed, "Boy, you've got a death wish or a golden heart." Elias Thorne wasn't always the type to make such impulsive choices. Back in New York, he was a rising star in corporate law, the kind of man who measured success in billable hours and corner offices. His days were a blur of skyscrapers, late-night mergers, and empty apartments overlooking the Hudson. Relationships? They were footnotes in his calendar, fleeting and forgettable. Kindness, he believed, was a luxury for those with time to spare. But his uncle, old Silas Thorne, had seen through that facade. Silas, a reclusive genius who had invented a revolutionary water purification system that saved villages in Africa, had left everything to Elias on one condition: marry for love, not convenience, and prove it by choosing from women the community deemed worthy but overlooked. The lineup included a stunning former model down on her luck, a brilliant scientist with student debt, and a vivacious teacher from the local school. Miriam Jouther, however, was different. At 28, she was the daughter of an Amish farmer, shunned subtly by her own community for her weight and her quiet defiance. She read books in secret, dreamed of helping others beyond the farm, but never complained. Elias had noticed her earlier, not for her appearance, but for the way she slipped a handkerchief to a crying child in the audience, her smile warm like sunlight breaking through clouds. As the laughter died down, Judge Whitaker wiped tears from his eyes. All right. If that's your choice, Mr. Thorne, we'll make it official. But mark my words, this ain't no fairy tale. Miriam here comes with her own world, plain living, no fancy gadgets, and a faith that could move mountains." Elias nodded, his heart pounding not from fear, but from an unfamiliar spark of curiosity. The other women exchanged glances, some relieved, others puzzled. Miriam, for her part, kept her eyes downcast, her cheeks flushing beneath her bonnet. She had volunteered for this odd arrangement not out of desperation, but out of a quiet hope. Her family farm was failing after a drought, and her younger siblings needed care. If marrying a stranger meant securing their future, she would do it selflessly, as her faith taught. But as Elias approached her after the hearing, extending a hand that trembled slightly, she looked up and saw not pity in his eyes, but genuine interest. "Why me?" she whispered, her voice soft as a summer breeze. Elias paused, searching for words. "Because in a room full of noise, you're the only one who seems real." Their first days together were a comedy of contrasts, a clash of worlds that could have unraveled any budding connection. Elias moved Miriam into his uncle's sprawling estate just outside town, a modern mansion with solar panels and smart home tech that baffled her. She stared at the voice-activated lights as if they were witchcraft, preferring to light candles from her satchel. "Electricity is a gift," she said one evening, chopping vegetables for a simple stew, "but it shouldn't replace the work of our hands." Elias, accustomed to takeout and microwaves, watched her in fascination. He tried to impress her with tours of the grounds, showing off the greenhouse his uncle had built for sustainable farming. But Miriam's eyes lit up not at the gadgets, but at the soul. "This earth could feed many," she murmured, kneeling to feel the dirt between her fingers. Elias joined her, awkwardly at first, his designer shoes caked in mud. It was in those moments that he began to see the selflessness woven into her being, like the time she insisted on baking bread for the neighbors, even though they barely knew her. Kindness costs nothing but returns everything, she explained, her ample frame moving with a grace he hadn't expected. Yet, beneath the surface, doubts simmered. Elias's friends from the city called, teasing him relentlessly. An Amish girl? Come on, Eli, you're throwing away your life. And in town, whispers followed them, the city slicker and the fat farm girl, what a mismatch. Miriam felt the stares too, her insecurities bubbling up like forgotten yeast. She had always been the one overlooked, the girl who hid behind her siblings at gatherings, her body a barrier she couldn't shed despite diets and prayers. One night, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance, she confessed, I know I'm not what you expected. You could have chosen anyone slimmer, prettier. Elias turned to her, the moonlight softening his features. Miriam, I didn't choose you despite your appearance. I chose you because of your heart. In that courtroom, while everyone else posed, you helped that child without a second thought. That's the kind of person I want to build a life with. It was a profound realization for him, the power of humanity lay not in perfection, but in quiet acts of compassion. For the first time, Elias felt the weight of his own selfishness lifting, like a fog clearing from his soul. As weeks turned to months, their bond deepened through unexpected turns. Elias introduced Miriam to the wider world cautiously, a trip to Philadelphia, where she marveled at the Liberty Bell, her eyes wide with wonder. So much history, so many stories of freedom, she said, linking her arm with his. In return, she taught him the Amish ways, churning butter by hand, quilting blankets for the homeless shelter in town. But the real twist came when Elias discovered Miriam's secret talent. Packed in her old trunk was a stack of handwritten poems and stories, tales of hope and redemption drawn from her life. I write to make sense of the world, she admitted shyly. Elias, moved, encouraged her to share them. Together, they started a small blog, anonymous at first, blending her words with his tech savvy. It went viral, touching hearts across the USA, from bustling New York to quiet Midwest farms. Readers wrote in, sharing how her stories inspired them to acts of kindness, a stranger paying for another's groceries, a community rallying to rebuild a burned barn. The emotional climax arrived on a crisp autumn day, when disaster struck Miriam's family farm. A fierce storm had ravaged the fields, destroying crops and leaving her parents and siblings homeless. Word spread quickly, and Elias could have written a check, his inheritance secure now that their marriage was official. But instead, he saw an opportunity for transformation. Rallying the community, he organized a barn raising like the Amish traditions Miriam cherished, but with a modern twist. Tech volunteers from his old firm arrived with drones to survey damage, solar kits for rebuilding, and funds raised from their blog's followers. Miriam, overwhelmed, stood amid the chaos, her eyes filling with tears as neighbors, Amish and English alike, worked side by side. Elias pulled her aside, kneeling in the mud. This isn't just about fixing a farm. It's about showing what happens when we choose kindness over convenience. In that moment, Miriam realized her choice to step into this strange marriage had rippled outward, creating waves of generosity. She embraced him, her heart swelling with love not just for him, but for the humanity he had rediscovered. As the farm rose anew, stronger and more sustainable, Elias and Miriam's life blossomed. They traveled together, speaking at events about the power of selflessness, how one act of compassion could ignite a chain reaction. Elias left his high-stakes law career, founding a nonprofit that merged technology with community aid, inspired by his uncle's legacy and Miriam's spirit. She published a book of her writings, dedicating it to the overlooked souls who shine brightest. Their home became a haven for those in need, a blend of Amish simplicity and modern innovation. Years later, as they watched their children play in the fields, curly-haired kids who spoke Pennsylvania Dutch and coded apps, Elias reflected on that courtroom day. The judge's laughter had been the spark, but their love was the fire. In a world often divided by appearances and ambitions, their story whispered a universal truth: true beauty lies in the heart's capacity for kindness. It reminded Americans, from coast to coast, that selflessness isn't a weakness but the greatest strength, capable of transforming lives and communities. And in choosing the path less seen, we find not just hope, but a brighter tomorrow for all.